Ladies, gentlemen, children
of outer space.
Welcome to Changing the Questions, the bi-weekly, I guess. Bi-weekly would be more than once a week. Right now we're doing these a couple times a week.
Yeah, whenever we want to put them
on. Of course, we're recording so many of them, we might end up having to...
We might surprise you, put one on a Friday.
Do this like 3 times a week.
3 a.m.
Something like that.
Yeah.
The Wrestling Podcast, which takes one single solitary question and breaks it apart and examines it and looks at it as closely as we possibly can.
Philosophically, even.
For the benefit of you at home. Now, Miner, I have my little Awesemo robot joining us.
Classic.
For this conversation, and do you know why?
No, why is that?
Because he's made in Japan.
Oh!
And today's question...
Nice segue!
Absolutely is about the land of the rising sun. The question that we are going to be answering today: could New Japan Pro Wrestling succeed in the United States of America? Now, for people out there who don't watch New Japan Pro Wrestling, shame on you. But okay, I guess we'll be more specific about it. New Japan Pro Wrestling has a history that's almost as long as WWE/WWF/WWF, going back into the 60s and into
Capital
the 70s.
Wrestling?
That's
even further.
Yeah, I guess so.
Anyway.
So it has a long and storied history, and it is also very popular in its home country right now, not just because of their homegrown Japanese stars, but because it has become a place where a lot of American wrestlers are going to make names for themselves as well. Finn Balor made his name there as Prince Devitt. Apollo Crews made his name not in New Japan, but in Dragon's Gate over in Japan as Uhaa Nation. AJ Styles has actually just disregarded and turned down offers from WWE to go work in New Japan because he thinks it's a better environment for him. So New Japan has a dearth of very, very good American wrestlers, and that's not even to mention the incredibly talented Japanese wrestlers that they have on there as well. Shinsuke Nakamura, Kazuchika Okada, Kota Ibushi. They have some of the legit best wrestlers in the world right now, and New Japan is having kind of a resurgence as of late because they offered their own basically network, New Japan Pro Wrestling World, NJPW World, which is about a year old now. You can get it for 999 yen a month, which I think works out to a little over $8 American. And for that, you get to watch videos going back to the 70s, from back when Mitsuharu Misawa was in there, and Stan Hansen and Bruiser Brody.
Hogan, man. I mean, Inoki and Hogan, I think, was one of the things we watched.
Yep. So the visibility,
heel Hogan,
visibility of New Japan globally is greater than it's been in a very long time, and especially in the United States. You know, you go to any independent wrestling show anywhere, and you're going to see half a dozen Bullet Club T-shirts. It's very popular now. But here's the question: if New Japan decided, hey, we're getting some ground, we're getting some momentum in the United States, we're going to start running there. We're going to start running, not just sending our guys over to compete in Ring of Honor or things like that. We're going to have our own shows. We're going to make television for the United States. Our monthly or bi-monthly pay-per-view shows that we do, we're going to do those for an American audience. Do you think it'd succeed?
Yes. I think it would succeed. But, you know, success is subjective. The way I look at it is, you know, if they're looking to gain most of the American audience, they probably won't succeed in that regard. If they try to put on a solid product with great in-ring action and focus on doing what they got to do, then yeah, they'll succeed. But if you're going to try to compete against WWE at their own game and try to do what they do, then you're not going to succeed. Like I said, do your own thing, you'll succeed. You know, you'll have your niche, you'll have your part, you'll have your share of the market. And,
I don't think that New Japan is
want to have two different. You want to have a couple of different things to offer.
All right, so let's go under like two options here. The option A is New Japan shows up and they try and switch their style to fit a more American style, which is basically what you're describing. I mean, they're going to try and beat WWE at their own game. Can they do that? Now, let's before we answer that, consider the fact that New Japan now has the opportunity to hire new writers and they can bring in some outside blood to potentially gear themselves towards that sort of audience, which I think that they would. I don't think that they would make the mistake of going to America and saying, hey, our Japanese bookers are going to handle all of this, and we know, like, we're going to try and basically, if we're going to try and do an American style, we're going to need to hire people who are familiar with that style to move us forward. So with that in mind, do you think that they could potentially beat WWE at their own game? Like, they pick up Jim Ross or something. Like, they sign Jim Ross as their head booker.
But you know what? Jim Ross is more of a traditional kind of wrestling personality. You know, he's not a traditional, not a modern creative writer, so to speak.
Okay, say they threw a boatload of money at Paul Heyman. Like, now we're getting pretty deep down the rabbit hole at this point, because Heyman's pretty tight with WWE.
If you get your normal run-of-the-mill Hollywood writer, it's not going to work. WWE is going to make it work in their favor, as far as they can make it work. It wouldn't work for New Japan.
Or like Gabe Sapolsky or somebody like that. Like,
you get somebody that's familiar with the business, and you get somebody that's actually familiar with the product, and I can see it working.
Okay. So that's...
But to me, it's going to be a different product.
So, okay, so that's kind of option one. New Japan trying to beat WWE at their own game. Option two is New Japan basically keeps their product the way it is. You know, they just take their whole show, move it over the ocean, and say, this formula works, we're good at it, we're sticking with it. Do you think an American audience would get behind, like, not just the hardcores, not just the diehards like you and me, do you think a mainstream American audience would get behind that?
I think if there's a hook, yeah, they could get behind it.
What's the hook need to be?
Nakamura is a fantastic...
Shinsuke Nakamura is your hook.
Yeah.
Which I kind of agree with.
He is a fantastic way to hook somebody onto a product.
Right, but here's the thing. Shinsuke Nakamura, to the best of my knowledge, speaks very little to zero English. Is that going to be a problem? Obviously, charismatic-wise, he is excellent. Wrestling-wise, he's probably the best in the world.
Exactly.
If not top
People talk about charisma all the time. They talk about in-ring ability. As far as, if you're watching a Japanese-based wrestling program and you expect these guys to speak perfect English,
this is America, though.
I get that. You better speak American.
This is America.
I get it. But if he learns a few lines, he's going to be fine. I think the product itself, New Japan Pro Wrestling, come on. If you're looking to watch wrestling from a promotion called New Japan Pro Wrestling, you got to know what to expect. You got to give them a little bit of leeway here. You're not going to expect them, or should you expect them to be WWE?
Well, but here's the interesting thing, though. You say Shinsuke Nakamura is the hook, and I agree with you to a certain extent, but I'm going to kind of clarify that.
American stars as well.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Nakamura,
as well.
I think guys like the Bullet Club, AJ Styles, Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, Red Dragon, who are working Ring of Honor, so they're established here. They're the hook. If you're flipping through channels and you see those guys there, and then they're the ones, and you understand them, and you understand that the way they work and do things, and obviously you do an American commentary team, English commentary team, whatever, they're your hook.
Yeah.
And then guys like Togi Makabe and Shinsuke Nakamura, Okada, those are the guys who keep you there. Just because, like, hey, I didn't kind of get this to begin with, but I saw that...
Familiar faces.
Yeah, I saw AJ Styles, and I saw AJ Styles on TNA, and I've seen him on Ring of Honor a couple times when I've been flipping through, television channels. I know he's good, but hey, who's the Shinsuke Nakamura guy?
Yeah, no, I can get behind that.
Who's Kota Ibushi?
Yeah.
Like, holy crap.
So, I mean, like, I guess you can say it's, you're going to stay for those guys. There's a couple of different ways to get hooked. As far as the way you look at it, I can agree with that. Because you see the familiar faces, you're going to want to watch them, you're going to see who they go up against, you're going to want to know more on them, you're going to see somebody else later on in the card, you're going to be like, who's this? Well, what's his name? And then go, whatever. And then you watch the match, you're like, okay, what's his name? I want to know more about him, I want to see more from him. Maybe I'll go back through their little backlog of matches, going back to the 70s to see how far this guy goes back. Let me go to the Wikipedia page. Let me go to the website and get it translated through Google Translator, see how far I can get into that. But,
So
you need a hook.
Here's
like
another.
you said, that's a good way to get started. Just see familiar faces and then go from there.
Another wrinkle in New Japan moving over is, I think it's safe to say that New Japan globally is WWE's number one competitor. WWE has no
Easily.
competition really here in the U.S. I mean, you could argue AAA or CMLL, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think if you're looking at the global world of wrestling in terms of popularity, in terms of quality, WWE is number one for all their faults and their shortcomings, but they have such a big head start because of what they've built, and then New Japan is underneath them, and then you maybe have everybody else falls in line. If New Japan comes to the US, this isn't just like a passing, like, oh, hey, those guys are our competition, but sort of not really, because they're over in Japan and we're not doing a ton in that market, and we could kind of almost work with them a little bit with, Finn Balor promo videos where we're showing him in New Japan and, having him retweet pictures of the Bullet Club and Balor Club shirts. That goes away, and that becomes, okay, these people who have already a big global fan base and a pretty solid base here in the United States are now directly competing with us, and then that's going to lead to now, whereas WWE and New Japan are kind of working not against each other, they're just kind of coexisting, now they're at war. And that brings a completely different dynamic to this whole thing, and it is going to be a thing of, now they're, WWE don't play nice, as we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a question of whether or not New Japan is going to be able to. I mean, they have rivals in Japan. They have All Japan. They have Pro Wrestling Noah. They have competition. But this is going to be. They're going to be the smaller fish in the big pond, and they're going to have to kind of learn what American audiences like. They're going to have to kind of establish themselves. Whereas WWE is here. They're established. They're set. They're going to have a big hill to climb to get here, and then once they get to the top of that hill, they have to fight somebody.
I don't see them pulling the dirty tricks off that WCW would pull off with.
I'm not saying New Japan will. I'm saying WWE. New Japan.
I don't know.
They will try and sign their guys
I don't
out
know.
from under them.
Well,
for
yeah,
sure.
I could.
That's the thing, is we talk about Shinsuke Nakamura being
Did you
the thing
hear
that
about
keeps
the
him
news today about Nakamura? They're looking to possibly rumors. Yeah, they're looking to possibly sign him, but that's a rumor.
Shinsuke Nakamura is somebody who's going to always be on their radar.
Yeah.
And by the time you hear this, who knows? Maybe more information will be out by then. But I until I actually hear something,
that, like I said, just a rumor. But that's what I'm
saying.
How these pick up steam. And,
is they're gonna sign those big guys in, and then they're gonna bring them in, and then they're probably not gonna push them to the top. They're probably gonna kind of squash them and put them on the mid card. So it's gonna make New Japan look worse.
I can see these two organizations.
So I can see them being dirty.
I can see these two organizations, kind of coexisting, not within the same space, but kind of their own separate thing. TNA wants to antagonize WWE by, saying, well, we're the better product. Da, da, da. I think the worst thing you could possibly do as a competing product is to go and
acknowledge the enemy.
Not even just so much as acknowledge. You can acknowledge the enemy and be respectful, but, antagonize and poke at them and, and just try to say you're better than they are and not deliver. It's happened with TNA.
Right.
And, it's... You got to deliver if you're gonna talk and try to say how much better you are. You have to deliver, no doubt. And if you can't, then who's going to take you seriously?
But here's just the problem that kind of lies at the bottom of it is I think, again, in terms of talent, in terms of the product they put on, New Japan is absolutely a solid competitor to WWE. But the mainstream audience going to follow a product in which their own race isn't the focal point? That's your question. So then at that point, does New Japan try and switch it up and make themselves more American-focused, American-centric, and then risk alienating their core audience? Or do they just cross their fingers and hope people accept it? Because just history has proven that, unfortunately, we as Americans are not necessarily the most accepting of that sort of thing with our entertainment.
Unfortunately.
Because it's going to be the Japan show instead of just a wrestling program.
And I can't see it. I can't see there being anything wrong with it being the Japan show. It's something different. It's another culture. It could work. Sometimes
we don't like culture here, Miner.
Well, sometimes people like culture, but
we like hamburgers.
If it's entertaining, it's good. People like what they see. They're going to stick to it. It's just a matter of liking what they see, and taking to it. If they don't take to it, then that's it. And if you're really successful, you can't do any wrong. If you screw up enough times and you do things right after a while, you had your chance.
And that's the thing, too, is that this is going to be a thing of does New Japan... this is a big risk to take, and it's a lot of money to dump into it. And for them to be considered succeeding, they would have to do... They couldn't just, flounder around on Destination America like Ring of Honor is. Even though for Ring of Honor, that's good, but for New Japan, that's just a huge step down. That's a lot of money to get there. They need to come out of the gates firing.
They got to hit the ground running.
And immediately get into competition.
We were talking about, Finn Balor earlier. Just, you had your past and everything. Don't focus on the guys that you had at one point. Focus on what you have now. If you want to, a little while down the line, say, hey, you know who we used to have here before? A great while into your tenure on whatever television station you're going to be on, say, hey, look at our past before, we came over here. We had guys like Finn Balor, Prince Devitt. We had those guys, and
Hideo Itami. Hideo Itami was more Noah. He didn't really do much in New Japan, but
Kenta, But it's just a matter of focusing on what you have now, push it forward, make sure it's good, and go from there. You can't. It's not complex. It's just a matter of putting a solid product on television, making sure people take to it. If they don't take to it, you may not succeed. It's simple,
All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for us, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we think on the subject. What do you think? If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to leave a comment in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe as well. That definitely helps us out. We want all the feedback we can get on the show as far as how you think we're doing, what you like, what you don't like. If you're listening to this on SoundCloud or any other podcasting platform, you can get in touch with me personally. Maybe by now we might have a Twitter handle, and I might be editing this to put that in there instead of what I'm going to say right now. But for the meantime, you can get in touch with me personally. My Twitter handle is @Scorcho, SCORCHO. Ding! That's Mike Miner. I'm Paul Laporte. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you soon.
Bye.